What it do, familiar? What it do, familiar? It's your boy Taxi PNG, and we're back at it again with yet another one. Today, we're going to be talking about the exposure triangle. I get asked this question a lot, right? So I'm going to be breaking down the exposure triangle for beginners. No fluff, no confusing math, not trying to make it so hard for you guys to understand. Because when I first learned about the exposure triangle, it was very complicated. I'm not going to lie. The words and the terminology that we're using just kind of made me want my brain to explode. So I feel like this is how I would explain it if I were to explain it to a beginner or the younger version of me who's just now starting out in photography and wanting to understand the exposure triangle more, right? As always, I always vow to keep it real, raw, and unfiltered with you guys. So we're not gonna have any fluff in it. I'm gonna make it real, raw, and unfiltered. All right. So by the end of this video, you should be able to understand exactly what aperture is, what shutter speed is, what ISO is, what they do, and also how they affect your brightness, how they affect the overall image and the output of your photos as well as videos. All right. So let's just go ahead and hop right into it. So the exposure triangle, what exactly is it? The first thing that you need to understand first is you have three settings on your camera that control how much light is able to hit your actual sensor. So the sensor of your camera is controlled by these three settings. So the three are aperture, shutter speed, and an ISO. Okay, so with aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, these are the most important things, but also these settings that will overall change how you capture light within an image. And as I always tell you guys in every video, as a photographer, our job is to capture light, and how we capture that light will vary. All right. So when it comes to settings, now we're talking about, I did a video last time on lighting. Now we're talking about settings. Okay. This time talking about settings, this is also the way of how we capture light and how we can curate and morph that light within our actual camera. So you guys to focus on the lighting first, lighting modifiers, lighting types, flashes, strobes, continuous light, and then focus on what we're focusing on today, which is the exposure triangle and how this actually affects your camera, right? And how you take photos. So all of these three work together: aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. If one of them is off, then your photo will either be too bright or overall too dark. So if just one of them is off, it could be too bright or too dark, and it can vary depending on if this is what you're going for, because not all the time is this what you're going for. Sometimes you might do it as a stylistic choice, but we're talking to beginners right now. So you guys are probably just trying to understand how things actually work. So your whole job as a photographer is capturing light, right? You have to learn how to balance these three things to be able to get that look and to achieve the look that you want, or overall to achieve the look that your client is wanting, right? So the analogy that I'm going to use today, which is exactly how I learned it, is using it like an eye. Right, so how your actual eyeball works. This is how I learned the exposure triangle. So I look at it like a circle. I don't look at it necessarily like a triangle. I look at it like a circle because for me, my lens is a circle. My eye is a circle. My ND filters are circles. Everything that I use to put on my actual camera is a circle. So I don't even my modifiers are circles basically. So I don't even know why I don't want to look at it like a triangle, because that confuses me. So I look at it as the exposure circle. Yeah, it goes against the norms. It goes against all of the old heads. It goes against what everybody says. It goes against all the rules of photography, but I believe that there are no rules in photography. So I'm going to try to make it super simple for you guys, right? This is the eye analogy. We're going to use your eye, you right there watching right now, the same eye that you're using to watch me and subscribe. We're going to use your eye as the example. So the aperture is like your pupil. It's like the pupil of your eye, right? And the black little part of your eye, I don't want to say black because some of you guys have hazel eyes or blue eyes or orange eye, whatever color eye your is, but that circle inside of your eye, yeah, that right there, the circle inside of the circle inside of your eye, a big pupil, so a big opened up circle pupil means that you're getting more light inside of your eye. Right? A small pupil means that you're going to get less light inside of your eye. So when the circle is bigger, what does that mean? You're going to be able to get more light in there. When the circle is smaller, it's going to be a lot harder to get some light in there. Even if you use it as an idea of a horn or something like that. If your fist is more closed, that air can't get through. The air is the light. If the fist is more open and you blow through, what is it doing? The air is getting through more so you can get in more light. Small hole, less light. Big hole, more light. Trying to make it very simple for you guys, make it very easy for you guys to understand. And then shutter speed is like your eyelid, or like something that would cover the circle of that hole, right? Something that would cover it so that way no light or wind can travel through. If you're using the horn analogy still, I need to throw that horn analogy away. I'm gonna confuse you guys. I'm sorry. All right. So your eye shutter speed is like your eyelid, right? If you blink fast, you get less light in because you're blinking fast enough to stop that light from coming through. You're blinking so fast that as the light or the wind tries to come through, it's like this. So if your light is your airway, or I'm using two analogies right now. I'm sorry that I'm mixing them. This is just how I understand it. I'm sorry, right? So if your airway of your horn is like this, when you close it, it's harder for that light to keep going through. See that right there? It keeps closing. So you close it fast, or you blink fast, you're allowing less light to come through, right? If you hold your eye open for a longer amount of time, you allow more light to come through before you close again. So it's like more light will come through before you close it again. Okay? And then ISO is like some eye drops that make you be able to see clearly now the rain is gone. The ISO allows more light to be able to come in. But the only thing about ISO is that it's artificial light. It's not real light. It's artificial light, which is why if you add too much light or too much artificial light, which is the ISO, into your image or your video, into the frame, let's just say frame right now. We're not gonna do photo or video, just frame into your frame right now. That's why you will start to see grain, which we call noise, right? Like you're like, oh, why are my images grainy? Because you're allowing too much noise. Your ISO is too high because it's artificial light. It's not real light. You got to add some more real light into your image. The artificial light is like a last resort. Like, bro, if you won't got it, you won't got it. That's that last resort. All right. You add that extra light in as a last resort. All right, so the ISO is like those magic eye drops. It makes your eye a lot more sensitive to light to be able to see more light or less light, okay? It adds that artificial light in. It makes it more sensitive to the light. So at night, this is what helps you see more. So if it's dark and you're doing nightlight photography, you will have a higher ISO because it will allow you to see a lot more at nighttime. All right, so this helps you see a lot more at nighttime. So this is literally how your camera works, and that's the three layers of how your camera works. Aperture also can go along with the background blur plus the light that's able to come into your image as well. So starting off with Aperture, which we also could call as f-stop. So if you look at it, f2.8, f1, f3, things of that nature, we call that f-stop as well. Aperture controls two very big things. One, how bright your image is, and two, how blurry the background of your image is, right? So how bright your image becomes, but also how blurry your image becomes as well. So one thing I can say too is on your lens itself, or on the screen of your actual camera when you're filming, recording, or whatever, you can taking photos as well on your actual LCD screen of the actual camera, the back part of the camera. So on this back side of the camera, you will be able to see it, right? It's gonna be at the bottom and it's gonna show on your screen of what aperture your lens at. So you'll see something such as, f1.4, f2.8, f4, f8, f10, and so on, right? So this is where everybody starts to get confused. The smaller the number means the bigger the opening. So earlier, how we talked about your eyes being wide open, or we talked about how open the circle is to allow that air to flow through, or to allow that light to come into your eyes. The more open your eyes are, the more that it allows that light to come in. The lower that number, the wider that hole. So this, for example, would be f1.4, right? This would be f2.8. This would be f4. This would be f8. This would be f. As it keeps going up, it gets more and more closer. It gets a lot harder for you to be able to see through that hole because every time your eye closes a little bit more and more and more. So it's not allowing that much light to come through, right? So f1.4 is a big opening for more light with more background blur. F8 will be a smaller opening with a lot less light, and the more of the scene will be in focus. So with f1.4, it's focusing on one particular point, it's leaving everything else out and blurring it out. F8 is trying to make a lot of stuff in focus so that way everything can be seen. But with this, you need more light in the situation. Whether you add more light in continuous or you have more ambient light inside of there or more flash or whatever it is, you have to add some more light yourself, right? So we'll get there. I'll about to say something else, but I want to get y'all too ahead of yourselves, right? So if you're shooting portraits and you want a creamy blurry background, then you're gonna shoot at f1.4, f2.8. I shoot at f2.8 when I'm outside or something like that, and I want to get that nice creamy background, depending on certain types of factors and stuff like that. But if you're looking for a blurry background, this is what you would shoot at. You would shoot at the lowest f possible on your lens, all right? And if you don't have a lens that goes that low, it's okay. You don't have to be like, oh my God, I gotta go buy one. If you got a lens that go to f4, that's fine, bro. You're good, right? If you're shooting groups and you're shooting landscapes and you want to focus on more people than just one, f1.4 and f2.8 is good for one person or two people. But when it comes higher than that or more people than two people, I would definitely say start to switch between f4, f5, f6, f8 ranges as well. This aperture will affect your image more than you think. It affects your image from the front to the back. All right. So that is what people call a depth of field, right? Aperture affects your image from front to the back of the image, the entirety of the image, all the way from the front to the back. Your foreground, your middle ground, background, all gets affected by aperture. If you guys have any more questions that you want me to deep dive into, please ask them down below in the comments, because I'm trying to just keep teaching y'all and keep helping y'all learn more. So ask these questions down below. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared. Just ask, bruh. I got you, and I will help you out. Okay. Next, I would say your shutter speed. Your shutter speed is where you focus on motion plus light as well. So you focusing on motion, it allows you to capture that motion, and also captures that light. Okay. Shutter speed, once again, how fast your eyes blink, how fast your eyes can blink, how fast that hole closes, how fast the circle is blocked, all right? How fast that opening is blocked, right? Shutter speed controls how bright your image is, and it also controls how movement looks within your image or your frame, right? So this is like how long your camera's eye is open, right? It shows how long it stays open, what speed is, how the speed of the blink is, okay? So how fast it can go and how long it stays open. So you'll see it written like 1/50, 1/100, 1/500, 1/1000, and so on, right? 1/2000, 1/24, all of those, but and so on, right? And a fast shutter speed like 1/1000 will freeze motion. So taking a picture of somebody at 1/1000 of shutter speed will freeze that motion. It will catch everything. It will catch the hair follicles and all of that, because you just froze them in a frame of time by having that higher shutter speed. But with this also, it will make your image darker. So a slow shutter speed like 1/50 will let in more light, because the speed of the blink is not as fast. The speed of the blink is a lot slower, so it's a lot harder for the light to get blocked out, because it's a slower blink. So it allows more light in faster. It allows more light in easier. But with that faster, it makes it a lot harder for the light to get in, bro. It hurts to blink that fast, bro. I might have just busted a blood vessel or something trying to do that. It's crazy. I'm just trying to show y'all an example. My eyes are going crazy, but just how fast it opens versus how fast it closes, all right? And a slow shutter speed will let in more light, but you will definitely start to see a lot more motion blur now, because it won't freeze that motion. It will add motion blur. There are different types of natural motion blur when you start to get in between the middle numbers of like 1/250, so like that. It freezes motion, but it still has a form of natural motion blur to it. I stay at 1/250. That's kind of my sweet spot. You can kind of play around wherever you want. 1/250 is straight for me. Between 1/125 and 1/250, those are chill numbers for me. Has natural enough motion blur, and my clients usually aren't moving too fast to where I need to, have it even higher than that, unless I'm out on a field or shooting some sports or kids sports, something like that, stuff like that. So if you are shooting, sports or kids running or cars or motorcycles, bikes, or anything like that, do you want to use a fast shutter speed, because you want to be able to freeze that motion in action. But if you're using if your shutter is slow, then this is for something that like somebody that's not moving as much. But if your subject is moving, then you will get a lot of motion blur, or you will get more motion blur than you would have gotten if it wasn't. Once again, this is a stylistic choice. So you're a creative photographer. This could come in handy. It could be okay. It might not even be that bad for you. If you're looking to do it like as a creative form of portraiture, it should be fine. With ISO, I can definitely say with ISO, this being the last piece of that triangle, but the last piece of my circle, because I look at it like, it's my circle. I look at it as a circle. I look at it as a triangle. When I look at it as a triangle, it threw my head off, because there were no more triangles in anything else in photography. I'm like, okay, there's only one triangle, and that's exposure. Everything else is circles and squares. So why is there a triangle? I don't know. It just threw me off. But their ISO is the light booster. So like that's that enhancement into your vision, lets you see better. Like, ha, I can see clearly now. Like everything's just like light boosted, right? That's what that ISO is, right? ISO, it comes after you set your aperture and after you set your shutter. ISO comes last. After you set your aperture and after you've set your shutter speed, then you want to look at ISO for like the look that you want, depending on what it is, right? So ISO is what you will use to brighten the overall image up and like kind of like bring that brightness up in a sense. But also, like, if you keep this in mind, an equation, if you will, a lower ISO, right? You guys can low-key write this down if you want. A lower ISO equals a cleaner image with less grain. A higher ISO equals a brighter image with more grain though, right? But more noise or grain. So lower ISO equals cleaner image, less grain, but you'll still need to add in probably some more light or have more light in your situation or your space or more ambient light, things of that nature. Ambient light, just a quick tangent. Ambient light is the light that's in the situation already before you kind of got into it. So that ambient light is what was already there before you brought any of your equipment or any of your light. That is ambient light, okay? And yeah. So it makes it higher ISO, makes your image brighter, but it does introduce more grain and more noise. For most cameras, ISO 100 to 400 makes it super clean, very chill, very vibe. Like you don't have too much noise started entering into it. 800 to 3200 is usually fine, depending on the type of camera that you're using as well. Definitely depends on the type of cameras you're using as well. But 640, I usually stay below 640, and I feel like you're pretty solid. 640 below is like my where I play at. That's my like range of playing. With video and stuff like that, it will change. The ISO that I use for video is a lot differently. We're not talking about video right now. Yeah, but yeah. So ISO is like that emergency backup. Because if you use ISO 6400 or up, then it will definitely depend on your camera. If your camera has dual native ISO, you need to know these things about your camera also, because you may not have that. My A7S III and the FX3 does have dual native ISO, but a lot of cameras don't have that. So trying to go over 6400, 64,000 or 6400 is going to be a little bit crazy, depending on what you're shooting. You know what I'm saying? Depending on what you're shooting. You can always use like noise removal and stuff like that, but now it makes your image look more AI and it's a lot of stuff like that. I understand people shoot and they do that, but now why you want to give yourself extra work? Like, why give yourself extra work? It makes no sense. Don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Don't give yourself extra work. So ISO is definitely your emergency backup. You use this when you need it. I wouldn't say use it all the time. Just use it when you do need it, but don't use it all the time because you don't need it all the time. Don't just crank it up for no reason. Please don't crank it up for no reason, bro, because you about to look real grainy. Unless it's like a stylistic choice. Once again, bro, like you might want to do that, and that's just you, stylistic choice. You know what I'm saying? But how to actually use this, a practical step that I would say, if you understand each part now, which you should, because I kind of went into super depth on it, and yes, I talk fast, but you guys can go ahead and change the speed, and yeah, all right, you can change the speed and make it a little bit slower, okay? If you can't keep up, I got you. Just press that little thing down there and slow it down. So let's talk about how you can actually use this in real life, because like the real question is, which one do I change first? What do I do? Blah, blah, blah. When do I use it? When do I not use it? Stuff like that. It definitely depends on what you're shooting. So for example, if you're shooting portraits, if I'm shooting a portrait and I want a blurry background, my first process is going to be to set my aperture to what I want first, such as I will set my aperture to 2.8, and then I will adjust my shutter speed depending on, you know, what I need, like how much speed I'm going to be having in my client. If they're moving fast, they're moving slow, this will all depend on that as well. So I'll set my aperture first, then I set my shutter speed, right? And then I will check my ISO, right? So if it still is a little bit too dark or too bright, I will tweak my ISO last to where I need it to be at. And if I feel like it's not enough, or I feel like it's still too bright, if my ISO is 100, my shutter is 250 or 125, and then my aperture is 2.8, if I feel like that's still not enough and I feel like the image is still too bright with that low of an ISO, I will then go back to my aperture and I will crank up. I will then go back to my shutter and I will go up higher on my shutter, all right, to help bring that, compensate for the lighting and stuff like that. But if you want to keep your shutter at the same, then you will use an ND filter. I will make a full complete video on ND filters if you guys want. But essentially ND filters are sunglasses for your camera. I would get a 3 to 32 stop ND filter from like K&F Concept or something. I have links to those down below. They're also going to be on my Amazon storefront for you guys to be able to check out. But I would say get you an ND filter if you're looking to have a low aperture, low shutter, and also low ISO. but not have to sacrifice anything for it being too, blown out or anything like that when you're shooting out in very, very harsh light. I'll make a full video on that later. If you guys really want to see that, let me know down below in the description and I'll make a video on that for you guys. But aperture is the priority, because if you want it to look blurry or you want that background to look blurry, that is the priority. Or if you have a lot of people in your setting or you have a lot of people you need to focus on, it's not just one person. That's your priority. If I got 5 people, I need to set my aperture accordingly. If I got 1 person, I need to set my aperture accordingly. If I'm doing a certain type of stylistic shoot, I need to set my aperture accordingly. Okay, so for groups and landscapes, moving into this, if I'm shooting a group or a scene and I want everything more in focus, I will start with setting my aperture smaller, right? So when I told you guys, once again, aperture smaller means a bigger number. So the bigger the number is, the more closed the hole is. The bigger the number is, the more closed my eyes are. All right, so my aperture is going to be at f5, f6, or f5.6 or f8 or something like that. For more people, depending on I'm using flash or not, is also depend, but just have it higher. F4 at a base, at least to start. F4 for groups and stuff like that. And then you can adjust your shutter speed after that. So first I'm doing my aperture. I'm shooting groups, F4, F5.6, F8. And then I will expose for my shutter speed to where it looks decent enough for myself. If I have a lot of movement in there, I'm going to go higher, not as much movement, and I can sacrifice, for the blur, so that I know they're going to be posed and still. I can shoot at a lower, shutter speed, like 1/125 or something like that, and I'll be able to be chilling. And then again, I will use my ISO at the end to fix the leftover brightness issues that I may have, right? So the goal here is you need more things in focus when you're shooting groups of people. So your aperture will definitely come first, all right? So you're always gonna focus on your aperture, right? Aperture comes first, everything else comes after that, depending on whatever you're shooting. But it kind of splits up like that majority of the time. I'm shooting sport, so I'm shooting a football game, a soccer game, kids running, anything that's moving fast. I will start with my shutter speed. Now I won't start with my aperture, I'll start with my shutter speed. So I might set it to like 1/500, 1/1000, depending on where I'm shooting and depending on how bright it is outside, so I can freeze that action. And then second, I will open up my aperture to let in more light. So I might go down a little bit lower, f2.8 or something like that, depending on it all depends on where you're shooting at, man. It all continues to depend on how much light you have around you and the time of the day that you're shooting. If you're shooting natural light, really, really bright outside, then you're going to want to have a higher shutter and a higher aperture, so that way nothing, it's not overexposed or anything like that. And then if it's still too dark, now I start to go raise my ISO until the exposure looks good for me, my eye, and my style. Okay. Here, movement is the priority, so the shutter speed will come first. If the movement is the priority and we're focusing on movement, and it's a football game, basketball game, whatever, then I will set my shutter speed first, then set everything else after the shutter speed, because the shutter speed is what matters the most. Like, that's the one thing that you can't sacrifice. So whatever kind of shoot you're doing, whatever the thing is that you can't sacrifice on, whether it's like blurry background or speed or something like that, you want to set that first. If I can't sacrifice on speed, I got to be able to stop motion. I got to be able to catch them in that motion, in that moment. I'm going to set my aperture last. I'm going to set my aperture second and my shutter speed first. I need to focus on that movement. If I want to set it blurry and I want to make sure that it's really in focus and high quality, blah, 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 all of that, I'm going to set my aperture first, all right? If I'm shooting groups, and the thing that the important part is having everybody's face in focus, I'm going to set my aperture first. So whatever your priority is, set your priority first and then go from there. If I'm shooting in low light, for a low light situation, or indoors, or at night, like nightlife photography or something like that, then I set my aperture as wide as possible, which would be like, f2.8, which is what I have. And then I will keep my shutter speed fast enough so that way my hands don't have to shake to where the shutter gets blurry. So like, for example, on 1/125 and 1/600, stuff like that, to be able to keep it to where enough light can still come in, the shutter speed is fast enough for enough light to come in. You know what I'm saying? You have the blinking, remember, enough light to be able to come in to where I can still have it, and I'll raise my ISO after that, so that way everything looks perfectly and perfectly exposed. If you guys want me to go more in depth on any of these, please let me know, and I will go more in depth on everything for you guys. I'll make a video on each thing, like ISO by itself. I'm just trying to teach you guys a lot more stuff. I'm trying to let you guys know the game, man. Trying to give you out again. I want to see a lot of you guys get a lot better. I've been seeing a lot of stuff and people asking a lot of questions, and I can't answer the same question 30 different times. So I just make a YouTube video for you guys to be able to go ahead and just share it to your friends. So for video, there's a whole different ball game. Video is a different ball game. You know what I'm saying? So with video, let's talk about video, bro. It's different. So with video, your shutter speed is usually locked to your frame rate, depending on what your frame rate is. And then you use something called an 180-degree rule. And with the 180-degree rule, this basically just means that if you're shooting at 24 frames per second, then your shutter speed should be around 1/50. So 50 plus 50, 24 times 2 is closer to 50, so it's 48, but it would be 50, and you would use 1/50 for your shutter speed. If you're shooting at 30 frames per second, then you need to have your shutter around 1/60, because 30 times 2 is 60. You guys see that? It's like math. Everything is like math. I'm not trying to make everything math, but everything kind of does come down to some form of equation. And I excelled very highly in math in school. So, but yeah, and then if you're shooting at 60 frames per second, your shutter needs to be at 1/120, because 60 times 2 is 120. All right, you guys got that? Got that? Class, got that? Let me know if y'all like me like calling y'all class. Not class, but like I need to think about what I'm gonna call y'all. And I'm gonna be doing these modules, man. I'm like culture. Do you guys understand culture? Culture? PNG? PGK, y'all got that? I'm gonna say PGK, y'all got that. Yeah, PGK, because PNG culture. PGK, y'all got that? Yeah, there we go. All right, PGK. So let's keep going. So if you're shooting at 60 frames, it needs to be at 120. If you're shooting at 24 frames, your shutter needs to be at 50. If you're shooting at 30 frames, shutter needs to be at 60. All right. This will give you that natural looking motion blur, but it will also feel natural to the human eye. It won't have any stutter. So when you start playing or doing something else, if you're shooting at 60 frames and your shutter's at 120, you can also slow this down as well. That starts getting into slow-mo. Whole different tutorial. We'll talk about that later. Let me know if y'all want to see that video. I'll make a video on that. But this is just about the exposure triangle, the exposure circle. But I hate calling it an exposure triangle, bro. It get over on me. So the video, your shutter speed is pretty much locked. It doesn't really change too much. But your aperture, you can control of how much focus and depth of field that you want. And your ISO will help you get the right brightness within your shot. A lot of cameras have base ISOs and stuff like that, or ISOs that are native or best for your camera. So check out your base ISO and find out what your two base set ISOs are for daylight and for nighttime, and use those. So each camera has something different. So FX3 has base ISO of, I think it's 100 and then 400. Oh no, 8. I think it's 400. I think it's 100 and 800 is the two base ISOs. So my base ISO would be 800, and then my other base ISO would be 12,800. So 12,800 is another base ISO, because it has dual native ISO. But that's my camera. That might not be your same exact camera that you're using for the A7S III. So during the day, if it's still too bright, I would say throw on an ND filter on your lens. That way, because you have to keep all the other settings set and they're locked, so you literally can't do anything else. Putting your shutter up is going to make it crazy, stuff like that. So definitely throw your ND filter on. I'll make an ND filter video. If you guys want, I will make a whole different video about ND filters. This is not that video. So yeah. Woo, that was long-winded. I love you guys. I want to say thank you for watching this video. So in that's pretty much the exposure triangle. Oh, it makes me cringe every time I say triangle. That's the exposure circle for beginners, all right? Broken down in the most simple way possible. Yeah. So aperture, once again, is how much the image is in focus, right? How much of your image is in focus, right? And with some of your brightness. The shutter speed is how much motion, you know what I'm saying, that you want in the image, how much motion you're trying to catch, as well as the brightness. And then the ISO is your backup light booster. It's like a backup light booster, but it does promote a little bit of grain and things of that nature. So keep an eye out for that. If this video was helpful, and it helped you finally understand your camera a little bit better, please do me a favor and drop a like down below and subscribe for that, boy. That's that PNG on the tube. But make sure to drop a like down below. Let me know if this was very helpful for you guys. If you guys learned a lot more from me, I do have a Patreon. The link is down below. That helps fund everything that I do here. It helps fund all the trips. It helps fund all the different workshops, stuff like that. The studios that we do whenever I do workshops. Going into, because I try to make my workshops free. So if you guys are Patreon members, you guys get to do the workshops. You guys get to do those updates, stuff like that. So all of that is exclusive for Patreon members. They get exclusive lives. They get exclusive replays. They get exclusive everything. I talk about everything in there. So they get all of that. Real, raw, unfiltered for real. The real, raw, unfiltered blueprint. So yeah, drop a like, hit subscribe, and comment down below what else you want me to break down next. I'm going to do a lot more of these breakdowns and try to like really help you guys scale and get better at your skills and things of that nature, right? I appreciate you guys for rocking with me. Appreciate you guys for locking in with us. And yeah, remember to always be real, raw, and unfiltered. Be your most authentic. Be your most. Always remember to be real, raw, and unfiltered. Be your most authentic self, and don't let nobody tell you what you can do or can't do. I will leave a link down below to the Discord. See you guys in the Discord. Until next time, Taxi.
Oh, there's the cookies. Be right back.
I don't need it. I don't need it. I definitely don't need it.